on the 11th of April. So this meeting will be live streamed on the YouTube channel. We'll take the first item, declarations of interest. Anybody? Any declarations of interest? No. Apologies for absence, James.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Clancy, Councillor Riley, Councillor Boardman and Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 3, the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 14th of March. If we can, everyone happy with those for accuracy? Any amendments? Overview and scrutiny, yes. Sorry.
My typo. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. Any matters arising? Nope. Okay, Chairman's announcements. Nothing. No announcements. Public speaking, James?
There's no public speaking.
So next we have the overview and scrutiny annual report. Now I'll take that as read. Any questions? Susan?
Just one, I noticed that there is a reference to the fact that the officer who was servicing the committee had left in September and there hasn't been a replacement yet. Do we know if there is likely to be or what that process is?
I'm afraid I haven't.
No, I'm afraid we don't know. No.
I did have an email from Councillor Laming regarding the time and task panel about the minutes of the meetings and everything. So they are on the OneDrive and everything, but the report obviously will come forward as and when the time and task panel concludes. I think she was looking at regular updates, etc., but that will be as and when. Yes. Okay, so any other questions on the report? No. Take us to the recommendation to recommend the annual review of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee 2022-23 to be presented to the Council. Any revisions made by the committee will be updated in the report. All those in favour? Against? No? Abstentions? Oh, 4. Absent? Did you get that?
I did.
I will
That's unanimous, Jim. Oh, right.
So next, we'll go to the quarterly report on there. This is page 15.
Thank you, Chair. So the report that you have before you is a strategic report, our strategic performance report that you see quarterly. You'll note that the report is in a new format this time. It's an exception-based approach. So you'll note that we have provided detail on those indicators that are red and amber. However, the narrative and detailed narrative for all of the indicators now sits in Appendix 2, in which you can see in the report. Direction of travel is also included on this new format, and that indicates whether the measure is moving in an upward or downward trajectory based on its performance against its target over the previous reporting quarters. So a really quick summary in terms of where we see ourselves in quarter 3. You've got 17 green, so that's 17 of our strategic performance indicators that are on target and against their performance levels. We have 9 that are amber, so that's 9 that have narrowly missed their target, and 1 that is red, so one where the performance has missed its outlined target. In relation to the off-target measures, so that one red measure that we see at the moment, that is related to staff retention. That's a 14% cumulative turnover against its target of 10% this quarter in terms of where we land. This report also includes in Appendix 4 some tweaks to the strategic measures as we will start to enter into our next year of reporting. There's been an opportunity to tweak some of those strategic measures, and you can see those tweaks in Appendix 4. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'll invite questions. Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks very much for the report. I've got a few questions. Under Chief of Staff, you're talking about hard to recruit posts, and it's likely that's going to continue in terms of difficulties. So this is on, page 18, paragraph 3.6. The HR overspend is in relation to covering maternity leave and also agency fees for hard to recruit posts. So now this is Q3, so that's up to December. Yep. We're actually through Q4 now, so I'm just wondering how the trend, what the trend is, and we expect it to continue, I guess. Hard to recruit posts.
So in relation to the financial aspect of that, that'll be something I'll need to pick up with Chief of Staff and provide some more detail on. In terms of the hard to recruit to posts, I think that's reflective of the market in terms of which we're operating in. There's some external influences at play there. It's not organisational wide, it will be related to specific posts within the organisation. It is something I would need to pick up with Chief of Staff to provide a little bit more detail on that. Thank you.
Okay, but in terms of risk, it is a risk that we're not able to recruit to those specialist posts.
Yeah, it is a risk. You'll see later on in the risk register, we do have a risk around capacity to deliver our ambitions based on recruitment being one part of that.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. We had a time and task panel looking into staff retention. And I'm just wondering if any of the recommendations that were made from that report have made the situation better in any way?
Without knowing the recommendations of that panel, I would need to speak to the Chief of Staff to give you an update on that. However, I know in terms of hard to recruit to posts, we have been doing specific targeted recruitment campaigns, especially around our apprenticeships as well. So I know there has been a lot of work that's been going on around recruitment and the way that we recruit into the organisation. I would need to get further detail from the Chief of Staff.
Chair. Sorry, Chair, I think I might be able to add a little bit onto that. So we've done some more work. I know the Task and Task panel looked at things like how we did inductions, and also when people left, we had we asked people why they left. There's some more work that's been done on that to look into it. We did have some people leave. I certainly know in my areas some of those were retirements, because we do have some areas of the organisation where our workforce is perhaps towards the I don't like to say ageist, but are towards the more mature age profile. And but what we are doing is, as I say, trying to look at grow our own. So we're looking particularly at apprentices, bringing those in where there's particular hard to recruit to areas. It tends to be certain disciplines, and it's not just us; it's a national issue. We all know people like planners are difficult to recruit to. Environmental health officers are another area, and that's why we are looking at offering apprenticeships, and some of those include degree apprenticeships too, so that we bring those people in and grow them up through the organisation. What I would say, just to put members' minds at rest, is obviously where we have found it difficult to recruit, we have gone out in some instances and are using people through agencies to ensure that the work continues to be done and delivered. But obviously that's not our preference. Our preference is to employ people where we can.
Thank you, Debbie. Councillor Catchpole?
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Holland?
There's been an increase in occupational health referrals, I see. I'm sure there must be a reason why the Chief of Staff isn't here herself to answer these questions, but I do hope that she'll be available for the Cabinet meeting, because I'm sure they'll have some if one of the major underperformance areas is high staff turnover. So I'm wondering, has there been a cultural shift? And is this increase in OH referrals and leavers linked to a different management style post the South Norfolk Council joint working? And I wonder how we're going to get an answer to that.
I would absolutely say no. I mean, we're now 4 or 5 years into our collaboration. Where we have changed to a new occupational health provider, and we are referring people earlier when people go off with some kind of condition that would imply there's perhaps a longer term impact. So I would just say we're actually better at managing that sickness and getting people back to work, which is obviously in all our interests to get those people back as soon as we can, making sure that they're fit and healthy when they do return. And sometimes that's a phased return plan in place. But no, I would say there's no change at all to a management. I'll just ask my other colleague, Jamie, I'll ask him as well whether he sees any change at all in that.
Nothing to add, Chair. Completely agree with what Debbie said.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether your background was South Norfolk, but obviously in Broadland, when I first arrived 5 years ago, we had very low staff turnover for a council, and so this is not a pleasant statistic for Broadland councillors to have to come to terms with.
I think we have to see this in the context that this would include also, this is a one team statistic here, and that includes the loaders and the leisure staff as well at South Norfolk. We are one team. We no longer provide this statistic by two. Those two disciplines, leisure and depot, do tend to see a higher level of sickness because they're more physical work, for instance, as well. What I would say is that you have to put this against the national picture too, and everybody is struggling to recruit. There is no change in the management style at all.
Thank you. I have Councillor Holland and then Natasha.
Yeah, so my question actually was going to be referring to what you've just said. How many of these staff are people from the leisure department or from the depot at South Norfolk? So that makes sense that you've got those included in there. I do think it would be useful from Broadland's point of view to be able to have a statistic which excludes those members of staff because they don't relate to Broadland. So I think it would be reasonable for us as Broadland councillors to request that we have some sort of measure which excludes those staff who don't directly work for Broadland. And I don't know if anybody else agrees with me on that, but it does seem to me to make more sense and for it to be more comparable then with what we have experienced before. So I would request that we do get that information if possible. Thank you.
What I would say is you're looking at a comparison with month, quarter on quarter on quarter for the last few years. So there is that comparison there. I understand what you're saying is that obviously it's over a bigger cohort, but we are one team now, and I feel that you can compare obviously this quarters with last quarters, for instance, and the previous
I
years
understand
in
we're
there.
one team. I get that. That's not my point. My point is though that a large cohort of staff do not do work in Broadland. They are not doing Broadland's work. So this is a joint working, which is fine. But what I'm saying is that where there are elements that do not relate to Broadland, then it's not helpful for Broadland councillors to need to work out which fits and which doesn't. So, and I don't think it must be possible to do that. And that's simply my request, is that I'd like to know where it applies insofar as Broadland services are concerned, because I do think that we have to remember that we are a separate council and we have a duty to our own residents to provide that sort of information. So that would be my request, is that we know what the ratios are for Broadland and for work that goes on in Broadland. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing for us to ask, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree with that, if I may. Sorry, Chairman. Essentially, as Broadland councillors, we need to know, should we be concerned? And if that figure is not acceptable to us, then we need to be able to drill down as to what's happening in Broadland that we need to be concerned about.
Can I add to that as well? Is that, it may be that you're quite rightly saying these are hard jobs, some of these, in the depot and that sort of thing, in the leisure industry. So it may well be that that's actually skewing the figures, and that we may have a better set of figures that we could demonstrate if we have the right information.
Debbie?
Sorry, could I just respond? I think rather than focusing on the figures, what we're really trying to do is focus on those areas in particular. So we're doing deep dives where we are seeing that there is a higher trend. So for instance, we had a deep dive in my council tax team. We have had a number of leavers, but actually half of those leavers were people who retired. Now, that is inevitable with that team, that there will be some people who retire. That's not to do, they just want to retire like most people do when they get to a certain age. And therefore, I had a look into that. So what I was trying to say is, I suppose, rather than focusing on the figures, we're focusing on areas where figures are showing us that, and I think in some ways that's much more useful for us to come back with. These are the areas where particularly seeing trends or higher than we would like trends, and what we're doing about it. I think rather than getting fixated on the numbers and the percentages, identifying those particular areas, and that's a piece of work that we're currently doing at the moment.
But if I may,
Okay.
my response would have to be to that. The figures are what we're given here, and the figures are what our residents see. So, I accept what you're saying, and a deep dive is perfectly acceptable. But nevertheless, the figures are the top line of what people look at. So I'd still come back to my original point.
Natasha, you were coming in.
Thank you, Chair. You talked about this. Sorry to address you when you're not actually sat here, so sorry to keep roping you in, but you talk, so I'm going to talk back. You talked about this being part of a national trend. Do we have any comparisons with other councils to how we match up with them, if this is just down to particular departments and things like that? And secondly, is any of this related to post-COVID working conditions, mental health, etc., etc.? Thank you.
We have been trying to seek some trends from other councils so that we've got that balance. I mean, you'll see in the press there's general talk about hard to recruit and people and firms struggling to recruit to people. But no, I haven't got particular figures to come back to you with. We have been asking, and we know that anecdotally, other councils are finding it difficult to recruit as well. But I haven't got any figures particularly there. In terms of COVID, again, anecdotally, there was the big sort of upheave once people felt more settled. We did see a period of time. So when COVID struck, we had many more people applying for our roles. I think they saw public sector as a safe area to come and work with. Some of those people left when other opportunities arose. So we did have some of that, particularly, as I say, I can only talk from my own experience in my council team. So we had people joined us during COVID when people were seeing that jobs were being lost. As I say, some of those have since left because other jobs have come back up and they've decided to not stay in the public sector. So there has been an element of that churn as well. What we are now seeing, and we did go through a period where we weren't getting, in some areas, many people applying for posts when there was quite that upheaval sort of as COVID started. We started to come out of COVID. What we are now seeing is that we are now getting more applicants again for roles. So I do think there is that national picture playing out here that we've seen as well.
See, before you come in, I'm just going to...
Thank you. So just to come back on comparators from other councils. So other councils do not report this measure publicly for us to be able to access that data. However, what we have done is looked at, and this is on page 47 of the report, we have looked at the HR Labour Survey. It's currently reporting on 2022 data that around 1 in 6 employees, i.e. 16.4%, resigned from their roles in 2022. When you look at that data in relation to 2021, it shows an increase. And so it's reporting a trend of total turnover increasing across the HR labour market itself.
Thank you, Chair. So on a similar note, under 3.4 on page 17, it's suggesting that we're attracting funding for various projects, which is brilliant to the council, but that the additional monies has increased capacity to deliver frontline services, but has increased pressure on support service functions such as HR, finance and IT, which are not directly funded by the grants. So how are the pressures on these central departments being managed? And what concerns me is that if our staff end up doing the jobs of more than one person, they'll end up in the situation like the junior doctors where they leave to find a place where it's easier to work. So how are we managing these extra pressures in a situation where we're finding it difficult to recruit?
So I'll jump in there, and Debbie might want to jump in after. So in relation to 3.4, primarily that relates to the financial impact on those support services, and we're looking at that as part of the budget setting process itself. In terms of sort of the projects that are related to delivery, that's part of our portfolio approach, the project governance approach that I know we sort of talked to you about in December, in prioritising the delivery of those projects with the support services as and when, but also looking to bring in extra resource where it's right to do so, where the benefits in terms of project delivery allow us to do that, to support those support services to deliver the services of frontline staff themselves.
Okay.
I'm just concerned that a lot of these grants seem to come on like very short notice and very short timescales, and that if the recruitment can't reflect that, then how is that deficit being managed?
I think that is the very nature of some of the grant awards and how they're delivered by central government. Jamie?
Chairman, you stole my thunder there a little bit. I was going to say almost the same thing. I mean, it is symptomatic of the way that government's relationship with us works, and often the funding pots are made available at very short notice with particular strings attached to them. Historically, currently, we're really good at reacting to those opportunities. It's been a real asset to us. It's been a real strength of us and other district authorities in the country. And of course, you know, the negative is spelled out in paragraph 3.4, and it's an excellent question. We need to make sure we reset and understand the organisational pressure that all of those different pots of money, some of which come from government, some of which come more locally from other public agencies as well. We just need to reset the balance to make sure that we're supporting staff in the right way with support functions. But the pro to that con is we've been exceptionally good at drawing money down to our local level, to our locality, to spend in a way that we see fit to support our residents. So I wouldn't want to lose that point as well amongst this. You know, we're talking about a need to just reset the balance slightly in the context of having been maybe too successful in drawing a lot of money down to a local level. Chair, that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I think also we did look at the way that the grant funding was coming forward and how it was allocated to give the area of responsibility to the officers and the portfolio holder in consultation with the portfolio holder, and how that was managed. So that has been looked at quite considerably. Councillor Davies.
Thanks very much. So page 82, it's reference risk reference BDC S13, supporting individuals and empowering communities. It's just an observation that earlier on in the report, it's reported an increase in affordable housing provision, which is good. But the housing list increases, suggesting we haven't got sufficient affordable housing. And interestingly, you know, the wording has been changed in terms of the risk slightly. But I'm suggesting that we need. There's an issue around the definition of affordable. We know that anyway. But under the new risk wording, it says there is insufficient private and social housing supply and access to temporary accommodation to meet the homelessness needs of our residents. And there is insufficient, but it's insufficient affordable private housing, and that's the key thing. We talk about that there's a huge amount of developments going on in the district, but it's having sufficient affordable private housing. I'm suggesting that should be clarified.
I think also if you take it in context, Richard Dunzer, was it 4 or 5 months ago, Jamie, brought forward the paper around the temporary accommodation, the affordable housing, and everything, and then and did a lot of analysis, and that came forward to this panel, and we looked at that and we went through the recommendations. So I think taken in context of that paper that came forward as well, in line with that.
Well, I mean, it's clarifying the point that paper actually highlighted the fact that we've got a growing housing list and that it's not going to get less, and that, as Note 4 says, under planned mitigating actions, a more strategic approach to future housing strategy and delivery, which is around that paper and so on. So I'm just suggesting that this risk needs to reflect that it's affordable housing that we need, not just private housing, but affordable. And we recognise that there is an issue with that definition of affordable housing, but I think at least we can include that in the risk description.
Jamie?
Chairman, if I may, I think that's a well-made point, and we can certainly take away the wording and have a look. I would observe two things with this risk. One is we've tried to amalgamate 2 or 3 moving parts into one risk, just for clarity more than anything. So previously risks around the number of Ukraine guests that were being generously supported by our residents, and in South Norfolk too, asylum dispersal, and all of these factors, as well as the cost of living crisis, placing growing demand on a relatively stagnant supply of housing. So hopefully the risk is a little bit more streamlined. We'll certainly look at introducing the word affordable to your point. I'd also observe that it's a supply and demand issue. So actually, recently we've had quite a good throughput of new homes becoming available through development and growth in the area that has helped to ease some of the pressures. But it's as much that the private sector lettings market has kind of fallen through somewhat due to government changes in legislation, making it less appealing for the private sector market to be available. It's just about reducing options for our residents as they're coming forth, but the demand is also there. The cost of living crisis, meaning more people are coming to the council to ask for more help. It's just, I think the risk is about trying to equate those two factors together. How do we as a council best support our residents at a time of need? So hopefully it achieves that.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Jamie. Absolutely. There are those pressures, and it's because of those pressures that we really need to have that strategy which focuses on providing that affordable, either social housing for rent or purchase, which needs to be reflected in this in the strategy going forward, which we've talked about, but also in this risk description.
Okay, Councillor Catchwell.
Thank you, Chair. I may have missed it in the report, but roughly how many people are on, or how many families are on the waiting list for housing in Broadland at the moment?
Chairman, I don't have that information to hand, but I'll certainly come back to you.
Okay. Councillor Creamy-Goulett.
I'm going to change the subject. If anybody else wants to ask any questions about housing first. No? Okay. I noticed the number of fly tipping incidents have more than doubled from Q2 to Q3. We recently had a major fly tipping incident in Taverham, which must have cost thousands to clear up. Is there any thought about rethinking about the charges that people incur when they take rubbish to the dump? Because this is increasing the amount of fly tipping. I notice your target is no more than 500, but Q3 had 493 incidences of fly tipping, and it must be costing the council thousands to clear all this up. If we took the charges away from the dump, maybe people wouldn't fly tip so much.
Yep. Councillor Leggett.
I'll say a couple of things, and probably Jamie wants to add to it. Firstly, there's a bit of an issue with the counting, so whether or not it is an increase or not. Yeah, I know what the report says, and a lot of the I don't know about the particular one in Taveram, fly tip, but certainly a lot of the stuff that is fly tipped could go to the dump without charge. So, and the county council has done a lot of work, as they were the ones that put the costs on, or the charges on the household recycling centres. And there doesn't seem to be any correlation between that.
So you're saying the report is wrong from the numbers that are in there?
As I understand it, Caroline, and I haven't quite got to the bottom of it yet, but I will do, there seems to be an issue with how we count the probably mostly minor fly tips, which the Veolia staff pick up as they drive past, because we have got that. And we've also got very tight timescales to clear fly tips as well. But it was the ones, how we actually count the ones that they pick up as they drive past are the ones that have made it look, or increase the numbers, because they weren't counted like that before. So we're getting to the bottom of the counting.
Okay, let me know when you find out, please.
Just to say, on page 89, in relation to fly tipping measure for next reporting period, so next year, it's a percentage. We're going to be also reporting on for Broadland District Council a percentage of fly tips removed, which may also help give you that context around the number of incidents reported against the number that are removed going forward.
I would be interested to know how much this is costing the council, though, yearly.
Thank you. I'm just going to pop in a couple of questions, because I mean, what we've done here is mainly focused on the amber and the red, and I think that what we should also do is take a look at some of the green measures and applaud the council for the efforts that they have done in achieving them. If we just take the waste on there, the household waste scheme and their GD. I mean, that has just been fantastic, hasn't it? It's about 2,000 tons off the top of my head, which has to be applauded. And an area where there was concern before was in planning, and we've now made some of the decisions coming through have increased to really good percentages. So within the report, we've concentrated mainly on the negatives. I'd like to just say, well done to the team for the positive aspects of it. Any other questions? Councillor Davis?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. Thanks to the staff for those improvements and continuing good performance. On page 83, risk reference BDC P2, and I appreciate, again, this is reflecting Q3, but this is in relation to the inability to find gypsy and traveller sites. To meet the need and enable the Greater Norwich local plan to be found sound, when this reporting period is to December, suggests that is saying that sites are being identified and they're being put out for consultation, and that these proposals are expected to be agreed for consultation by the end of January. Inspectors have accepted partnerships proposed process, which should enable adoption in or around Q4. Well, we're in Q4 23-24. Okay, so I'm just wondering if okay, this is for the Q3. So given that the consultation process has gone through, I guess, yeah. Sorry, I guess we need to find out, what the result of that in terms of affecting the risk score. But I'm just wondering if I read that wrong, because it's suggesting that The process should enable adoption in or around Q4. So that's 23-24 in a year's time. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not this
Literally.
Q4. Yeah. Apologies for that.
Any more questions? Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20, it refers to recycling garden waste and that this tonnage has gone down. Partly, I understand, because of a dry summer, but is there a less demand for garden waste services, and could this be due to a large increase in charges?
Chairman, I can take that one. Another excellent question. The answer is no. Demand has gone up by about 1,000 homes amongst residents. We set ourselves a very ambitious target of, I'm not going to quote a number because I'm not sure I'm going to get it right, but significantly higher than that, which we failed to achieve. That in part will be due to the dry season itself and the lack of generation of garden waste. But no, our overall number of people claiming that garden waste services increased this financial year.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? So there's more people paying for collection of garden waste, but less garden waste in the bins that are being emptied. Is that right?
Spot on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on the performance report? If not, we'll go to the recommendations. Okay, can I take the 4 recommendations on block? All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's unanimous.
7. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. So we'll now go to page 90, the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership and the strategy. Abigail, Jamie, are you joining or are you?
Thank
Thank
Chair.
you.
So about a year ago, the Council endorsed the approach of revising the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Strategy jointly with the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership. After months of workshops, working groups and consultations with a huge array of partners, we've arrived at this document in front of you. So it lays out the local data, experiences and knowledge of the partnership to use as a strategy, laying out the direction and impact we intend to have over the next year. This strategy has been agreed by the partnership and is now being taken through each partner's organisations to be endorsed. This already shows a real incredible acceleration in partnership working for better health and wellbeing outcomes, and we're really excited about what this could achieve. So the 3 priority delivery areas that have been identified in the strategy are firstly mental health and wellbeing. We know a person's mental health really affects every other area in their life, so working at a local level to build resilience, as the partnerships have already been doing through projects such as Mindful Towns and Villages, we can have the biggest impact on our residents. We'll continue to work closely with all partners such as police, healthcare, NSFT, VCSCs and many others. The second area is access and prevention. So the earlier we can access health and wellbeing services, the more likely it is that we can prevent the worsening of these conditions. The mix of partners we have around the table gives us a real chance at improving the challenges our residents and healthcare colleagues are facing at the moment. The third area is resilient and healthy communities. Enabling our residents equal opportunities to live in and be active parts of a strong and healthy community is essential to this area of work. We'll be working closely with partners such as Active Norfolk, Norfolk Community Foundation, Citizens Advice and many others. The cost of living crisis and COVID-19 recovery are also recognised as cross-cutting focuses underpinning the work that the partnership intends to do. Action statements are outlined in the strategy, and these will form the work of the delivery groups that they will carry out. We're committed to co-producing the work within these priorities so they can have maximum impact and reach, so understanding our communities will be crucial. So we're asking you to endorse this strategy as a partner organisation in the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. I had this presentation at what was formerly known as Wellbeing. So it's just buzzing in my. Okay. No, I'll just push it back a bit. I'm too loud. Yeah, we had this presentation at what was formerly known as Wellbeing Panel, and I just want to raise the same issue that I did there, as well as something else. This report was started before the proposed closure of the walk-in centre. So just to get it out there, that and to reiterate that this will be a sort of a live document, and you will make adaptations as and when required. And has there been any changes since that question was raised? Thank you. Just a little second one as well. I raised this before at another ONS. When you do your what's it called, the mental health champions, and it's going out to individual wards, I asked previously whether there would be funding for individual town councils to host these sort of information starters. I haven't had an answer to that yet. So just to make sure it is universal across the whole of the district, where Sprowston isn't going to pay for it, but another town council, just so it's even, so everyone knows where they stand. Thank you.
Thank you. So about the Ruin Road consultation, that will absolutely be taken into account, especially in our access and prevention area of work. And this was obviously written before that, but it will now be in that delivery group. Sorry, Fran, did you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. About the walk-in centre, I've written a letter to the Integrated Care Board on behalf of the council opposing the closing the Ruin Road Centre. So just so you're aware on that. I know colleagues in South Norfolk have too, as have probably many others. Just so you're aware on that. Okay, thank you.
About the Mindful Towns and Villages project, that is working with parish and town councils, so I believe our colleagues will work with them. But I think I did send you an email, but I will chase that up in case it didn't get to you. I'll chase that up. Thank you.
Okay, and also on the Ruin Road, I know that this came forward. I sit on the HOSC at Norfolk County Council. This has come through there. They have delayed the report, and I think that will be after May. Now the report will be coming through. Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. Just wondering how much of an impact is shortage of volunteers having on community groups, and what, if anything, the council can do to help the community groups with that problem? Thank you.
A good question. It's probably quite a localised response. So I know, without having information in front of me, I know we do a lot of work in our communities team under Kerry Gallagher, working what we call our Community Links project. You remember, if you can, to the immense amount of community groups that some of which already existed and grew, and others appeared almost overnight during COVID. And we've really tried to augment that and continue to work with those groups, many of which, of course, are affiliated or even driven by the town and parish council. But invariably, there will be cold spots in the district areas as well, where we really struggle for not always obvious reasons to recruit volunteers. And I know the team will be aware of those cold spots and doing what they can to try and generate more volunteering opportunities and activities. I can't give you detail, but if you'd like, I can come back to you with any information if you want to follow up with a particular question.
Thanks, Jamie. I just wondered what, if anything, the council can do to encourage volunteers. I mean, in a cost of living crisis, obviously, it's very difficult, whether you've got a pension or whether you've just got an income from a benefit, that you may have the time to volunteer, but you would need some help to cover costs and things like that. Is there any way, is the council looking at that kind of thing?
Yes, we are. I mean, there's any number of grants that we make available throughout the course of the year to try and encourage localised groups to establish or even survive. The communities team, we're working to set up volunteering groups, things like knitting groups, whatever the need might be, try to establish those things. And often these things only need a very small amount of seed money to get them off the ground, but actually in the grand scheme have quite a big impact. So again, I'm not being specific because I haven't got the information in front of me, but the team do work on this actively day by day to try and encourage volunteering opportunities where they can. And we're not the only players in this space. So organisations like Voluntary Norfolk or the Community Foundation or other VCSC organisations will also be doing similar, and of course we'll work alongside those guys too.
Anyone else? Any questions? Again, I just wanted to say the good work of Kerry and her team. The introduction of the social prescribers in the district since we've been here has proved to be very, very fortuitous, and we are held in high regard for what we've done in that area. So, Jamie, thank you, and pass our thanks on to you, Kerry. Anybody else? If not, we'll go to the recommendations. Okay, so the recommendation that Cabinet recommend that Council endorses the Health and Wellbeing Strategy as a partner organisation in the Broadland Health and Wellbeing Partnership. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
We'll next go to page 109. Oh, Councillor Nedden.
Thank you, Chairman. It's in connection with this next item that you're about to go to. But because I arrived late, I wasn't able to put in a declaration of interest. So just to make you aware, it's not a pecuniary interest, but the company that I work for is in the process of securing 2 of the larger units at the Food Innovation Centre. So I await your discretion as to how I should be involved in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you can take part in the debate, but then not vote on the recommendation. Right. While we're just having discussions, we'll move on to this, and we'll Emily.
Thank you, Chair. So by now you'll all be familiar with the Broadland Food Innovation Centre. This report is requesting delegated authority to enter into contract with a successful supplier following a formal tender for the centre management and innovation support service at the centre. As a bit of context, the centre manager operates the Broadland Food Innovation Centre on the council's behalf. So this involves things like tenant management, keeping the centre in good order, managing our utility bills, and managing our paid services like accessing our conference room or test kitchen. The business and innovation support role provides specialist business support to our food and drink businesses within our area. So there's no cabinet meeting in May, and therefore delegated authority has been requested to ensure contract award is completed before the current centre management and innovation support contracts end in June and October 2023. The absence of a contract award in time to maintain the services at the centre would negatively impact on customer experience at the centre and would also experience the council to significant commercial risk associated with the management of contracts, tenants and the collection of our payments. So that's why this paper is being brought to cabinet this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Emily? Councillor Holland?
Yeah, so
Councillor Catchpole, did you put yours?
Could you
All
tell
right.
me how
Councillor
many
Davis.
of the units are let or still vacant, perhaps? That would be perhaps helpful. So that's one question. My second question is about, I noticed in the capital report in the one of the previous reports, it talked about the 3.1 million that is being spent on the centre funded by grants. So can we just clarify exactly if this sort of cost is included in that? And if not, what sort of cost we're talking about to the council that will come out of council budget?
Sure, thank you. So the first question was with regards to occupancy levels at the centre. So I'm pleased to say that we currently have 85% of our units under offer at the moment. So that means we only have 2 units that are actually void without potential tenants. Obviously, it takes quite a little bit of time to get the tenants actually occupied. There's quite significant relocation costs for food and drink businesses. So we have 2 tenants who are physically operating out of the space. And then we have another 9 tenants who are currently working through legals in terms of agreeing the leases and working with lawyers at the moment, which is, I hope you'll agree, quite a good position considering the centre only opened in September last year. The second question was with regard to funding. So these posts are funded using the centre's operating budget. So they aren't a direct cost to the council at all. They're funded by the rental income that's generated by the centre. The funding arrangement for the way for the Food Innovation Centre in terms of the funding that we receive from the Department of Levelling Up means that the council isn't able to generate profit for a certain number of years following contract completion. So that means that all of the money that we generate through the rent has to be reinvested to continue the support for our food and drink businesses locally, and that's what we're intending to do with these two with this contract.
So for clarity, as I understood it, the Anglia LEP also had put some money into this. So presumably my main concern about that really is all to do with the proposed devolution deal and the movement of the LEP into the county council. So clearly that would have some form of impact. So basically, how much is Broadland as a council liable to be putting in extra, if anything?
The council's not going to be putting in any additional income into the centre as a result of this contract. I am aware of the issues with the LEP that are ongoing at the moment. We're just waiting to see how the devolution deal works out so that we can then understand the impact that will have on the contract, because we have an investment agreement with the LEP in place. I don't have the answer to that at the moment, but we are aware and we'll be working on it once we have a little bit more detail. Certainly, yeah, if the terms of the contract change, we'll need to come back to Cabinet to arrange that.
Thank you. Councillor Davies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. So you've got 2 working at the moment, physically working in the Food Innovation Centre, and 9 others who are. So it's partly my ignorance. Just for clarification, then, in terms of the support offered, it's beyond just the physical presence of those clients in the building. Then it's in terms of supporting business innovation across the district. But I don't know if you can give any kind of examples of how that might work out. I'm just trying to assess, if you like, the amount of what we're putting into this in terms of what the needs really are.
Sure, yeah, I can give a bit more detail on that. So, of course, a big part of the food innovation project, as it's been planned up to now, is about the centre itself, so getting people into the centre and helping them to grow their business. But there are also ways that we can help food and drink businesses without giving them physical space. So that involves potentially supporting them in writing a business plan, which might then subsequently generate investment to allow them to buy an expensive piece of capital equipment that can then allow them to scale up in their existing premises. We've also worked with businesses who are in the early stages, even startups, to help them to connect with people that they might not have been aware of without our support. And that has resulted in some of our businesses getting their products into supermarkets. So it's more of those kind of softer things that aren't specifically related to physical space themselves, but do also connect them with the right people that will enable their businesses to grow.
Okay, that's useful in terms of it's not just the management of the centre, but that further support. Thanks.
Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm wondering, was it always planned for there to be a paid management team in place here? Will it be financially self-sustaining? And what decision-making power will Broadland retain?
Yeah, I can cover that. So yes, it has always been planned that there will be a managed contract at the centre, and that was covered in the original Cabinet approval for the Food Innovation Centre back in 2021. So that's still kind of the same intention. Because this is a contract that we'll have in place with the supplier, then the council does have ultimate control over the way the centre is managed. So that's actually one of the reasons we set it up in this way, is because we can control the way that the service is provided. And we've done quite a bit of work on that in terms of ensuring that the specification reflects our needs based on what we've learned about operating the centre over the last 6 months or so with the existing contract that was in place. And as I said earlier, in terms of the financial arrangement, the contracts that we're referring to now will be paid for using the operating budget at the centre. I've recently, last week, actually just sat down with Rodney Fincham and went through the operating budget line by line. So I think we're relatively comfortable now that we've covered all the things we need in there. And we're still looking at falling within the tolerances of the original Cabinet report from 2021. So it's looking good at the moment.
Thank you. Just to follow up. So how often will the contract be reviewed? And will there be any surplus funds coming back into Broadland?
So the contract will be reviewed on a monthly basis. So we'll have monthly performance reviews with the provider. We work on that basis at the moment. The contract will be in place for 3 years with the potential to extend by 2 years. So if things are going well and we think actually in terms of saving kind of time, re-procuring the contract, we want to extend it, then we have the opportunity to do so if we choose to. Sorry, what was your second question?
Will there be any surplus coming back into the council?
Oh, okay. So unfortunately not at this stage, because the funding mechanism from the Department of Levelling Up means that we need to reinvest all of the income that we generate through the rent back into the centre. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at providing the food advisor role, because it enables us to use that money by supporting our businesses directly rather than generating income straight back to the council. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that just as a result of the funding mechanism for the first, I think it's 15 years of the centre opening.
Right,
Yeah,
sorry.
that was originally in all of the
Yeah.
papers for the Food Innovation
So-
Centre on how the whole thing worked, and that's come before us several times
so
before.
just to clarify that then, the cost to the council of the staff time and any resources, any legal fees or anything else that goes into the Food Innovation Centre, the offset of that is purely the planned economic growth gained by having the centre in Broadland. Is that right?
Sorry, the cost of all the council's investment is covered by the operating budget. So the operating budget covers not only for these contracts, but it also covers for staff time associated with managing the contracts. It covers marketing time associated with marketing the centre, so getting the good word out about the work that we're doing. It covers legal fees, it covers fees associated with commercial agents, etc. So all of those costs are already covered, and they are being recovered through the operating budget at the centre.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll go to Councillor Holland.
It's more an observation, really, because I understand the purpose of this report is to request a delegated authority. And I can see that there is, it says here there's funding available to maintain the current Health Innovation people in until September. So I'm perfectly honest with you, I'm not happy about delegated authorities. And I've said this before in these meetings, we're getting more and more of them coming through. So it becomes less and less for the councillors to be able to formulate a decision, and more of something that's being done outside of that environment. So I'm not keen on them. And I understand the timetable you've got here, which says that, you know, the contract would be awarded on Tuesday, the 2nd of May. My question really is there any way that this could be adjusted or manoeuvred so that it could be not delegated and be decided at the level it would normally be done? And if not, you know, why has it not been taken into account that could have been done?
So unfortunately not, because one of the contracts ends on the 30th of June. So we need to ensure that we have somebody in post ahead of the 30th of June date. We would ordinarily take that to Cabinet in May, but because there isn't a Cabinet in May, we unfortunately don't have time to do that. And the timescales associated with the tender period just have kind of fallen awkwardly, and that we haven't been able to go to Cabinet kind of fully in April with the contract awards. So the tenders were returned at the end of March. They've been scored at the moment, but they're still going through the procurement process in terms of making sure that all the boxes have been ticked, essentially. So we have looked at it, but unfortunately, with the time that's available to us, it does need to be a delegated authority if possible.
So perhaps we could make a note that for future reference, it would be useful to look at these things enough in advance that we don't have to keep offering delegated authority to things, because I think it slightly skews the purpose of a council and the way councils work if we have to keep doing this. So perhaps that could be, I may reluctantly have to vote for it. It's not something I'm happy about, though.
Thank you, Sue. Any more questions? If not, I'll go to the recommendation. Okay, so we'll go take both of them on block. All those in favour? That's
Yes, Jim.
carried. Thank you. I'll go to item 11, exclusion of press and public. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access for Information Variation Order 2006 would be disclosed to them. I so move.